In the next 30 seconds, I am going to reveal something that could already be happening to someone you know. A sophisticated mail scam is sweeping across the country, and according to new warnings from some of the highest legal authorities in America, it has already drained millions of dollars from unsuspecting victims. This is not some distant threat in a spam folder. This is happening in mailboxes right now, and the people behind it have become terrifyingly good at what they do. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how this scam works, why it is so effective, and most importantly, what you can do right now to protect yourself and your family from becoming the next victim. Let us talk about why this matters to you personally, because this is not just a story about fraud statistics on a government website. This is about your bank account, your savings, and potentially your entire financial future. Think about the last time you checked your mailbox without thinking twice. Bills, postcards, maybe a letter from a relative. Now imagine that one of those pieces of mail contains something that looks completely legitimate, something that has official seals and legal language, and a return address that seems familiar. That mail could be the entry point for criminals who have figured out how to drain accounts while the victim sits there completely unaware. The Federal Trade Commission reported last year that consumers lost more than $800 million to mail fraud schemes, and that number only represents the cases that actually got reported. Security experts believe the real figure is much higher because many victims do not even realize they have been compromised until weeks or months later, when strange charges appear or their accounts suddenly show balances that make no sense. When we talk about mail fraud, we are talking about a crime that preys on the most fundamental trust we have, the belief that the postal system delivers legitimate communications from legitimate sources. Now let us get into what this scam actually looks like and why it has law enforcement so deeply concerned. The basic structure is not new. Scammers have been using mail for decades to trick people into sending money or sharing personal information. What is new is the sophistication of the operation and the specific targeting of bank account information. The typical scheme works like this. Criminals send out mailers that appear to come from your bank, your credit union, or even a government agency like the Social Security Administration or the IRS. The mail looks authentic. It has official-looking logos, professional formatting, and language that feels authoritative. Some of these mailers even include what appears to be a notice that your account has been flagged for suspicious activity and that you need to call a number immediately to verify your information. Others might claim you have won a prize or inherited money, but first you need to provide your bank details to process the payment. Here's where it gets really dangerous. The phone numbers provided in these mailers connect you directly to trained con artists who know exactly what to say to gain your trust. They might mention your actual address, which they obtained from public records or data breaches. They might reference your bank by name. They might even have some basic information about your account that they piece together from various sources. When you are on the phone with someone who seems to know so much about you, it becomes very hard to believe they are a scammer. What makes this particular scam so devastating is that it exploits a gap in our awareness that most people do not even know exists. We have been trained to be suspicious of emails and phone calls. We have heard warnings about phishing attempts and robocalls, but we still trust our mailboxes in a way we do not trust our inboxes. When a letter arrives in a proper envelope with proper formatting, our guard goes down automatically. The Supreme Court warning that has been circulating through legal channels and consumer protection agencies centers on this exact vulnerability. According to reports from multiple legal observers, the court has noted an acceleration in cases involving mail fraud that specifically targets banking credentials, and the justices have emphasized that existing legal frameworks may not be equipped to handle the scale and speed of modern mail fraud operations. What this means in plain language is that the traditional legal tools used to prosecute these crimes are struggling to keep up with criminals who have learned to exploit every weakness in the system simultaneously. The criminals are organized, technical, and operating across state and even international borders, making prosecution extremely difficult even when authorities know exactly who is responsible. But here is what you need to understand about why this scam works so well. The people running these operations have studied human psychology with the same rigor that marketing companies study consumer behavior. They know that fear is one of the most powerful motivators. When you receive a letter that says your bank account has been compromised or that you face legal action if you do not call immediately, your brain goes into emergency mode. You do not stop to verify the sender. You do not look up the official phone number from your bank statement. You call the number on the letter because the urgency feels real, and you do not want to risk losing access to your money. This is called psychological anchoring, and it is one of the most effective manipulation techniques in existence. The scammer on the other end of the phone knows you are frightened, and they know you want to solve this problem as quickly as possible. So they walk you through what sounds like a security verification process, but what they are actually doing is collecting everything they need to access your account. They might ask for your social security number, your account number, your online banking password, your PIN, or the answers to those security questions you set up years ago. Every piece of information seems harmless on its own, but together it gives them complete control over your financial life. If you are finding this breakdown useful and you want to stay ahead of emerging threats like this one, subscribe now and turn on notifications. We track these developments in real time, and the next update on this story could change the entire picture of what you need to protect. Now let us go deeper into the specific mechanisms these criminals use and why traditional defenses are failing to stop them. The sophistication of modern mail fraud extends far beyond printing fake letters and buying a phone number. The organizations running these operations have invested significant resources into making their schemes nearly indistinguishable from legitimate communications. Some of them use high-quality printing equipment that produces materials with the same weight and finish as official bank correspondence. Some include holographic stickers or embossed seals that look just like the security features on real government documents. Some even include what appear to be barcode labels or tracking numbers that make it look like the letter went through the postal system in a way that can be verified. The people answering the phone are trained professionals who use carefully crafted scripts designed to handle any objection or question the victim might raise. They speak with confidence. They use industry terminology naturally. They might even have access to systems that display fake bank confirmation screens while you are on the call, making it look like your account is right there on their computer. These are not amateurs working out of a basement. These are criminal enterprises that have refined their methods over years of operation and have adapted to every new security measure that banks and law enforcement have implemented. What makes this particularly challenging to combat is the way these schemes interact with other forms of fraud to amplify their effectiveness. Criminals do not operate in silos. If someone falls for a mail scam and provides their bank information, that information immediately gets shared across networks of criminals who use it for secondary fraud schemes. Your account might be drained directly through unauthorized transfers, or your information might be sold to other scammers who use it to open new accounts in your name, take out loans you never applied for, or file fraudulent tax returns to steal your refunds. The damage from a single successful mail scam can spiral into months or even years of financial recovery. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has documented cases where victims spent more than a year trying to restore their credit and recover their losses, and in some cases, the damage was permanent. When we talk about mail fraud, we are not just talking about one isolated crime. We are talking about the opening move in a cascade of financial devastation that can affect every aspect of a person's life. One of the most alarming aspects of this current wave of scams is the way they specifically target demographic groups that are traditionally less aware of digital security threats. While anyone can become a victim, reports from consumer protection agencies indicate that certain groups are being targeted more heavily. Older adults are a primary focus because they tend to be more trusting of official-looking mail and may be less familiar with the range of digital fraud tactics that younger generations have grown up hearing about. But criminals also target recent immigrants who may be less familiar with how American banking and government systems work, as well as small business owners who may be more susceptible to threats about their business accounts being frozen or legal action being taken against their company. The targeting is not random. It is calculated based on the information available about potential victims and the specific pressure points that are most likely to produce results. This is not speculation. Security researchers who have analyzed seized materials from fraud operations have found detailed demographic profiles and targeting strategies that mirror the approach used by legitimate marketing companies. Here's what the experts are saying about what makes these scams so difficult to stop. When you file a complaint about an email phishing attempt, the trail can sometimes lead investigators to the source. Email headers contain technical information that can be analyzed. IP addresses can be traced. The digital footprint of an email campaign leaves evidence that skilled investigators can follow. But mail fraud is different. A letter mailed from one location can be part of an operation headquartered in another country entirely. The return address might be a vacant house that criminals rented for a month using fake identification. The phone number might be a voice-over IP service that can be activated and deactivated in minutes. There is no digital trail to follow, no server to seize, no email header to analyze. Law enforcement agencies have acknowledged that tracing mail fraud operations requires physical surveillance, witness interviews, and coordination across multiple jurisdictions that can take months or years to produce results. And by that time, the criminals have usually already moved on to new schemes and new victims. Share your perspective in the comments below. Have you or someone you know ever received a suspicious piece of mail that seemed legitimate at first glance? What tipped you off that something was wrong? Your experience might help someone else recognize a scam before they become a victim. While you are thinking about that, consider this next piece of the puzzle, because there are specific things you can do right now that dramatically reduce your risk of falling for these schemes. The most important thing you need to understand about protecting yourself from mail fraud is that the criminals rely on urgency to cloud your judgment. Any legitimate communication from your bank, the government, or any other official entity will never demand that you call a number they provide in the mail or email. If you receive a letter that claims your account has been compromised or that you face immediate legal consequences, the first thing you should do is stop and breathe. Look at the letter carefully. Check for misspellings, unusual formatting, or contact information that does not match what you know to be true. Then do not use any phone number or address provided in the suspicious letter. Instead, look up the official customer service number from your bank statement or the back of your bank card and call that number directly to verify whether the communication was legitimate. This single step, verifying through official channels rather than following links or calling numbers in suspicious messages, would prevent the vast majority of these scams from succeeding. Beyond the immediate verification step, there are broader practices that significantly reduce your vulnerability to these schemes. Regularly monitoring your bank accounts and credit reports allows you to catch unauthorized activity early, before it spirals into something larger. Setting up account alerts through your bank's official app or website means you will receive notifications whenever your account balance changes or a transaction occurs, making it much harder for criminals to operate unnoticed. Being extremely cautious about sharing personal information over the phone, even when the caller claims to be from your bank or a government agency, protects you from social engineering attacks that mail fraud schemes rely on heavily. And finally, talking about these scams with family members and friends, especially those who might be less aware of modern fraud tactics, creates a network of mutual protection that makes everyone safer. The Supreme Court warning that has been circulating through legal circles is essentially a call for greater public awareness and more aggressive prosecution of mail fraud operations. But the justices have also acknowledged that prevention and public education remain our most effective tools against this threat. Law enforcement agencies at the federal and state levels have increased their focus on mail fraud, and there have been some significant prosecutions in recent months that have disrupted major operations and recovered stolen funds. But the criminals are operating faster than the legal system can respond, which means the most effective defense remains individual vigilance and awareness. The people running these schemes count on the fact that most people will not take the time to verify suspicious communications, will not report attempted fraud even when they recognize it, and will not warn others about the tactics they encounter. Every person who breaks that pattern makes the entire system slightly more difficult for criminals to operate within. Looking at what happens next, experts who track fraud schemes closely believe this particular wave of mail fraud will continue for the foreseeable future because it remains highly profitable and relatively low risk for the criminals involved. They also believe the tactics will continue to evolve, with criminals finding new ways to make their mailings look more legitimate and new psychological pressure points to exploit. What this means for you is that the protections you put in place today need to become permanent habits rather than temporary precautions. Check your mail with the same healthy skepticism you apply to your emails. Verify before you trust. Report suspicious mailings to the appropriate authorities even if you did not fall for the scam, because your report might be the piece of information that prevents dozens of other people from becoming victims. And stay informed about new scam tactics as they emerge, because the criminals are not standing still and neither can your defenses. 3 specific things to watch for in the coming weeks and months. First, watch for mailings that reference recent data breaches, because criminals often use news about compromised databases as a hook to make their fake communications seem timely and relevant. Second, watch for letters that combine multiple pressure tactics, such as threatening legal action while also offering a prize or discount, because this combination approach has proven particularly effective at overcoming skepticism. Third, watch for communications that reference specific recent transactions or account details, because this personalization is becoming more common as criminals gain access to larger pools of stolen data that they can use to make their scams more convincing. The bottom line is this: mail fraud is not a relic of the past. It is a growing threat that has adapted to the modern world and become more sophisticated than ever before. The criminals who run these schemes have studied our vulnerabilities, exploited our trust, and developed methods that can fool almost anyone who is not actively looking for the signs. But that awareness, that willingness to verify and question and slow down before making financial decisions, is exactly what makes these scams beatable. You have the power to protect yourself and your family from becoming another statistic in the growing fraud epidemic. Use it. Stay alert. Stay informed. And if you found this breakdown valuable, subscribe for our next deep dive, because we are already tracking the next development in this story, and it could change everything you thought you knew about protecting your financial security. The fight against mail fraud is ongoing, and every person who understands the threat is a person the criminals cannot easily prey upon. That is how we win this battle, one aware citizen at a time.